My wife's name was Vivian. She collected old pocket watches, not the expensive kind, just the ones with stories behind them. Flea markets, estate sales, the occasional antique shop off the highway. She'd hold each one up to the light and say, "Every watch someone carried means someone was trying not to be late for something they loved." The one she gave me on our 30th anniversary wasn't fancy. Gold-plated, with a small dent on the case from where a previous owner had dropped it. She'd found it at a shop in Tennessee during a road trip we took the summer our youngest left for college. She had it engraved on the inside of the lid. "Time is yours now. Use it well. V." I kept it in the top drawer of my nightstand. Every night before bed, I'd open the drawer just to see it sitting there. After she passed, November, 3 years ago, that watch was the only thing I reached for when I needed to feel less alone. I'm 64 years old, retired from 31 years at a paper mill in northern Ohio. I own my house outright, a 3-bedroom on a quiet street where the neighbors still wave when they drive past. My wife and I raised our son here, in this house. His bedroom window faces the oak tree he used to climb. She planted hydrangeas along the front, walked the year we moved in. They still come back every summer, blue and heavy, like she left them instructions. My son's name is Kyle. He's 38. His wife is Amber. They have a daughter, Zoe, who just turned 7. They've been living in Columbus, renting a place Kyle always complained was too expensive for what it was. He works in sales. She works part-time in a dental office. Between the two of them, they made decent money. Not rich, but fine. More than fine, actually. Then the lease fell through. Their landlord sold the building. They had 60 days. Kyle called me on a Tuesday night. He laid it out plainly. They needed somewhere to land while they figured things out. Just temporary. 3 months, maybe 4. I said yes without thinking twice. Zoe called me Grandpa Norm and she drew pictures for me and left them on the kitchen table. Of course I said yes. That was 18 months before everything fell apart. The first 6 months were actually fine. A little crowded, sure. Kyle used my garage as a storage unit for things they couldn't fit in the house. Amber rearranged the kitchen so her things were in the front of the cabinets and mine were pushed to the back. Small things. The kind of things you overlook because family is family. But month 7, something shifted. Kyle started spending evenings at the kitchen table on his laptop. Not working, gambling, online sports betting. I didn't know it then. I found out later. He stopped contributing to groceries, then the internet bill, then the electric. I didn't say anything the first couple of months because I didn't want to make it awkward. I told myself he was going through something. I'd been 28 once. I'd had hard stretches. But he wasn't 28. He was 38, with a wife and a daughter, living in his father's house for free, and the man couldn't find $30 for a bag of groceries. Amber was different. She wasn't unkind to my face, but there was something beneath the surface, a kind of impatience. She'd sigh when I watched the evening news too loud. She'd make comments about the house, how the bathroom tiles were dated, how the carpet in the hallway needed replacing, as if she were the one paying a mortgage on it. One Sunday afternoon, I came downstairs and found her on the phone with someone, walking through the house slowly, opening closet doors. She saw me and said she was just checking square footage for future planning. I didn't ask what that meant. I should have. It was a Wednesday in March when I noticed the watch was gone. I opened the nightstand drawer like I did every morning. Just a glance, a 2-second habit. The drawer was empty except for a phone charger and a few old receipts. I told myself I must have moved it. I checked the dresser, the bathroom, the shelf in the closet where I keep a few of Vivian's things, her reading glasses, a birthday card she made me the year I turned 60, a small bottle of the perfume she wore on special occasions. The watch wasn't there. I checked the drawer again. Then the whole bedroom. I pulled out the nightstand entirely and looked behind it. Gone. I went downstairs. Kyle and Amber were at the kitchen table eating breakfast. Zoe was watching something on a tablet in the living room. I asked Kyle as calmly as I could manage if he'd seen the watch from my nightstand. He didn't look up from his coffee. Which watch? The gold one. Your mother's anniversary gift, the one that was in my drawer. He glanced at Amber. Something passed between them. Quick, like they'd rehearsed this. No idea, he said. Amber took a sip of her orange juice and didn't say anything. I stood there for a moment. It doesn't walk away on its own. Maybe you misplaced it, Dad. You've been pretty forgetful lately. I am not forgetful. I have never been forgetful. I know exactly what's in that drawer because I opened it every single morning for 3 years. I didn't say any of that. I walked back upstairs. I spent 2 days looking. I went through every room. I checked coat pockets, shoe boxes, the shelf in the laundry room. I looked under seat cushions. I asked Zoe gently if she'd ever seen Grandpa's watch. She said no, but she said it quickly and looked at the floor. On the third day, I drove to the pawn shop on Route 9. I don't know why I went there first. Instinct maybe, or something I didn't want to name yet. The man behind the counter was older, heavy-set, with reading glasses on a chain. I described the watch. Gold-plated, small dent on the case, Tennessee hallmark inside, engraving on the lid. He went to the back without a word and came out carrying it in a small velvet tray. My chest did something strange, tightened and released at the same time. Someone brought this in 4 days ago, he said. Young man, late 30s, said it belonged to his grandfather. I told him it belonged to me. I told him about Vivian. He listened without interrupting. When I finished, he was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "Before I called you, the watch was on the display shelf for about an hour. A woman came in to look at it. She noticed the engraving and asked me if I could open the case." "Open it?" "Some of these old pocket watches," he said. "The case has a second lid inside. A hunter case, they call it. Protects the watch face. But some of them have a compartment behind the movement. A little hollow space." He paused. This one did. I felt the floor shift slightly under my feet. "There is a folded piece of paper inside," he said. "I didn't read it. I put it back. But I thought the owner should know it was there before I sold it." He slid the watch across the counter toward me. "I think you're the owner." I sat in my car in the parking lot for 10 minutes before I opened it. My hands weren't entirely steady. I found the inner case on the third try, a small notch on the edge, the kind of thing you'd never notice unless you were looking. Inside, behind the watch movement, folded into a square no bigger than a matchbook, was a piece of paper. Vivian's handwriting, small and careful, the way she wrote when she was being deliberate about something. "Norman, if you're reading this, I hope it's because you're curious and not because something is wrong. But knowing you, it's probably both. I put this here because some things need to be said where no one else can hear them. This house is yours. Everything in it is yours. Don't let anyone tell you different. Not even the ones who should know better. Especially not the ones who should know better." I spoke to Alan Greer before I got too sick to drive. He has a copy of everything. The account at Midwest Savings, the one you didn't know about, has enough to make sure you're okay for a long time. The number is in the blue envelope in my recipe box. You never looked in the recipe box. Take care of the hydrangeas, and yourself, in that order. All of it, always. V. I read it 3 times. Then I sat with my hands in my lap and looked out at the parking lot for a long time. Alan Greer was our family attorney. We'd used him for 30 years. Wills, a property dispute with a neighbor. Standard things. I hadn't spoken to him since Vivian's funeral, when he'd handled some of the paperwork. She had gone to see him without telling me. When she was sick but still driving, she had set something in motion and then folded a note into the hull of a watch and trusted that one day I would find it. The recipe box was on the third shelf of the pantry, behind a box of pasta and a can of chickpeas. Blue tin, painted roses on the lid. Vivian had used it since before we were married. I'd seen it 10,000 times without ever opening it. Inside, under a stack of index cards in her handwriting, pot roast, apple cake, the cornbread she made every Thanksgiving, was a blue envelope. Inside that, a handwritten account number, a phone number for Midwest Savings, and a folded letter from Alan Greer, dated 14 months before she died, confirming the setup of what he called a separate property account in my name alone, funded incrementally over several years from household savings she'd quietly redirected. I sat on the kitchen floor, between the pantry and the refrigerator, and I didn't move for a while. She had known. Not that the watch would be stolen. She couldn't have known that. But she had known that someday I might need something she couldn't be there to give me in person. Resources. Options. the ability to stand on my own ground. She had trusted me to find it when I was ready. That evening, I called Alan Greer. He answered on the second ring, as if he'd been expecting me. He told me the account had been accumulating for 11 years. Vivian had started it when our son was in his late 20s, after a period when Kyle had come to her, not me, her, asking for money to cover a debt he didn't want to explain. She'd helped him then, quietly, and she'd never told me. But she'd started the account that same week. She said she wasn't worried about him, necessarily, Ellen told me. She said she just wanted to make sure you'd always have choices. We spoke for almost an hour. He walked me through everything. The account, the will amendments I hadn't known about, a letter she'd left with him in a sealed envelope, addressed to me, that he'd been holding until I contacted him. He read it to me over the phone. I won't share all of it. But near the end she wrote, "He gives too much and asks for too little. Someone has to balance that out. I'm not ashamed to say I cried in my kitchen that night. The ugly kind, the kind that comes out of nowhere and doesn't have any dignity to it." The dog looked at me from across the room like he was worried. The next morning, I drove to a hardware store and bought two things: a small, motion-activated camera disguised as a smoke detector, and a combination lockbox that fit inside my nightstand drawer. I installed the camera in the corner of my bedroom ceiling, angled toward the door and the dresser. The instructions said it stored footage to a micro SD card and could also be checked from a phone app. I'm not particularly tech-savvy, but my neighbor's kid, 19, studies computer stuff at the community college, walked me through the setup in 20 minutes. Then I put the watch and Vivian's recipe box in the lockbox, and I started paying attention. I want to be fair here. I didn't go looking for a fight. What I was looking for was clarity. Within 11 days, I had it. The camera captured Kyle going through my bedroom twice while I was out. Once on a Thursday morning, once on a Saturday afternoon. He tried the nightstand drawer both times. The second time, he tried the dresser. He stood at the dresser for almost 3 minutes, opening drawers, moving things around, putting them back. He wasn't looking for anything specific. He was looking for anything valuable. The second piece of clarity came from Alan Greer, who had quietly reached out to a real estate attorney at my request. Amber's future planning phone call had an answer, as it turned out. Kyle had contacted a real estate agent 6 weeks prior, asking about the process of transferring property when a parent is still living, specifically about what happens to a house when a parent is declared incompetent to manage their own affairs. Let me sit with that for a moment, because I had to. My son, the boy whose bedroom window faces the oak tree he climbed every summer until he was 14. He had been asking someone how to take my house while I was still living in it. I contacted Alan on a Monday. By Thursday, I had served Kyle and Amber with a formal notice to vacate 30 days, per Ohio law, since they had no lease and had paid nothing toward the household in over a year. Alan drafted it. A process server delivered it at 9,014 in the morning while I was at the diner 2 miles away, having coffee with my neighbor and his wife. When I came home, Kyle was sitting at the kitchen table. Amber was pacing. Zoe wasn't there at school, I assumed. "You can't do this," Kyle said. "It's my house," I said. "We have nowhere to go. You've had 18 months to figure that out." He tried several angles over the next hour. That I owed them. That his mother would have wanted this. That I was throwing away my relationship with my granddaughter. That I wasn't thinking clearly. That I was being manipulated by that lawyer. That I'd regret it. I let him talk. I'd spent 64 years learning when to speak and when to let the other person run out of steam. When he stopped, I told him about the camera footage. I told him I knew about the real estate inquiry. I told him I knew about the gambling. I looked up the browser history one evening while he was out, which took me about 4 minutes of searching. I told him that what I knew could stay between us, or it could go further, and that the choice of which direction this went was largely his. He went quiet in a way that was different from before. The bluster went out of him. "Your mother left me the tools to protect myself," I said. "I didn't know that until recently, but I know it now. They were out in 28 days. The house felt enormous the first week. I'm not going to pretend it didn't. You spend 18 months with people in your space, even people who are exhausting you, and when they leave, the silence lands differently than it did before. But by week 3, I started doing something I hadn't done in years. I started using the third bedroom, not as a guest room, as a workshop. I've been woodworking since my 40s. Nothing elaborate, just small projects. Birdhouses, cutting boards, a rocking chair I made for Vivian when Zoe was born. I set up a workbench along the window wall, put up pegboards for the hand tools, moved the larger power tools in from the garage. Every morning I'd have coffee, walk the dog, and then go spend 2 hours in that room making something. It turned out that was exactly what I needed. I called Kyle in September, 4 months after he left. He answered, which surprised me a little. I didn't apologize and I didn't ask for one. I said that I was his father and that wouldn't change, and that Zoe was my granddaughter and that wouldn't change either. I said that if he wanted to rebuild something between us, I was willing to try, but it would have to be on different ground than we'd been standing on. He was quiet for a while. Then he said he'd been going to a counselor for the gambling. That Amber had told him it was that, or she was leaving. I said I was glad he was getting help. I meant it. We didn't resolve everything in that phone call. We didn't resolve everything in the next few months of occasional and careful conversations. Some things take longer than 30 days to undo. But Zoe started coming over on Saturday afternoons, just her and me. We'd work on small things in the workshop together. She's surprisingly patient for a 7-year-old. She made a lopsided birdhouse that I hung on the oak tree in the backyard, and the first week it was up, a pair of wrens moved in. Vivian would have loved that detail. The watch is back in the nightstand drawer. In the lockbox, but in the drawer. I still open it every morning, same as always. Sometimes I take the watch out and hold it for a moment. Feel the weight of it, the small dent in the case, the slight warmth of the metal. I never had the compartment sealed. I leave the note inside, folded the same way she left it. On nights when the house is quiet in a way that feels too big, I'll take it out and read it. Not because I've forgotten it. I could recite it from memory at this point. But because her handwriting is in it, and that's enough. She knew I gave too much and asked for too little. She knew it 30 years into a marriage, and she spent 11 years quietly making sure that when I finally needed to ask for something, I would already have it. I didn't find the watch because I was looking for it. I found it because my son tried to take it, and a pawn shop owner with reading glasses on a chain thought someone should know about the compartment before he sold it. Funny, the things that save you. Funnier still, the people who plan it all in advance and never say a word. I'm 64 years old. I wake up in my house, which is mine. I drink my coffee. I walk the dog. I go make something in the workshop. On Saturdays, my granddaughter comes over and we hang things on trees. Time is yours now. Use it well. I'm trying, Vivian. I really am. I've thought a lot about what actually happened in this story. Not the legal part, not the camera footage, not even the note. I mean the deeper mechanics of it, how things unraveled the way they did, and why. Kyle didn't wake up one morning and decide to become someone who steals from his father. It happened slowly, the way most things do. One small choice at a time. He let someone else pay the bills. Then he let himself believe that was normal. Then he let a gambling habit quietly hollow him out. And somewhere in all of that, he stopped seeing me as a person and started seeing me as a resource. That's not a sudden transformation. That's what happens when a person stops being accountable to anyone, including themselves, for long enough. And I have to be honest, I let it go on too long, not because I was weak, because I confused keeping the peace with being a good father. Those are not the same thing. Vivian understood that better than I did. She spent 11 years quietly making sure I would have what I needed to stand on my own ground, because she knew my instinct would always be to give more than I should and ask for less than I deserved. She built me a safety net I didn't know existed, and she did it without making me feel like I needed one. That was its own kind of wisdom. What I keep coming back to is this. The watch didn't save me. The note didn't save me. What saved me was being willing to see clearly once I had the information in front of me. A lot of people get the information and still look away. I almost did. When Kyle said I was forgetful, some part of me wondered for a half second if he was right. That's how it works. That's how people who are being taken advantage of get kept in place. Not with force, but with small repeated suggestions that their own perception can't be trusted. The moment I walked out of that pawn shop parking lot, I made a decision. Not about Kyle, about myself. That I was going to act on what I knew, not on what was most comfortable. That the life I'd built, the house, the hydrangeas, the workshop in the back bedroom, was worth protecting. Not out of stubbornness, out of self-respect. And here's the part I think matters most, especially for anyone who recognizes something in the story. Standing up for yourself is not the same as giving up on someone. I called Kyle in September. I show up for Zoe on Saturdays. I left the door open, but I left it open from a place of strength, not desperation. There's a difference, and it changes everything about what walks through that door. Vivian used to say that the most dangerous thing a person can do is confuse loyalty with silence. She wasn't talking about Kyle. She was talking about life in general. But she was right about both. I'm 64 years old. I'd made my share of mistakes, things I held on to too long, things I should have said sooner, choices I made out of exhaustion instead of intention. But I'm still here, still in my house, still opening the nightstand drawer every morning, still putting birdhouses in trees with a 7-year-old who has her grandmother's patience and her father's stubbornness. That's enough. More than enough. Time is yours now. Use it well. I'm working on it.